What it is a number of individuals that come together over a common purpose, a common cause, a common anything. And coming around this loosely centralized structure, this idea, you guys try and work independently, autonomously, towards the same goal. So I'm a part of Pizza DAO. We, for example, sold pizza NFTs. We raised over $1 million selling pizza NFTs, and since then we've given away over $400,000 of free pizza. The idea was that pizza should be free. That was the mission. People that love pizza came together, sold NFTs, and we threw the world's largest pizza party on May 22nd, and we're going to be doing it again this year. And more recently, with the amazing guy that was on stage, Ukraine DAO, where we raised over $8 million for Ukraine, just to make sure that they could have proper funding for civilians, to make sure that people were taken care of, and that the unfortunate things that were happening were mitigated as best as we could in the blockchain space. That wound up steamrolling and snowballing and really helping Web3 and blockchain get much more worldwide exposure in terms of how powerful things can be when it is decentralized. There are a lot of centralized companies that actually shut down funding for people that are trying to raise money for civilians for Ukraine. So very grateful for that. And right next to me is a person who inspired me to come into this space with Liquid Star, with a lot of things that I learned that he was doing, utilizing Web3 and crypto. So Scott, for those of us that are still learning about this space, can you tell us a little bit more about who you are, about Liquid Star, and how you've made already an incredible impact in so many lives?
Thank you, Will. So I'm Scott, I'm one of the founders of Liquid Star, and at a high level, what we do is we provide energy and water in emerging markets, so focusing on East Africa, West Africa, Southeast Asia, and then also the Middle East. So what we did is we have these solar-powered shipping containers that provide electricity and water. People in the communities, they come and they rent batteries, they buy water from us, and then when there's excess solar electricity, we mine Bitcoin and Ethereum, and then we give a percentage of that back to the locals as a form of UBI. So, you know, it's a good example in the Web3 space. Like, we started this in 2018, and everyone told us like why this wouldn't work. And really, we had two kind of like acceleration points. The first was we just got lucky, and like Elon Musk, Cathie Wood, and Jack Dorsey got on a podcast or something like that, and was basically saying like, hey, this is a good idea, people should try it. And we literally sent that podcast to our first investor. He was like, okay, how much money do you want? This is my first mistake as a startup. I did not ask for enough money. So something to learn, like negotiate down. Yeah, and then kind of from there, what we were failing to communicate is that, you know, to a lot of the Web3 people that have been in the space for a while, they may have bought Bitcoin at $10. So when they hear that like, oh, you're only gonna make $10 to $40 per day mining, they're like, oh, this is nothing. But if you're a person that's making between like $1 and $5 per day, someone that has the potential to give you 5 cents, 10 cents, 20 cents, $1 per day, that's like a lot of money for you. And so the example that I use to kind of make it easier to understand is that right now the US dollar is about $1 to 500 Naira. So obviously like 10 cents is 50 Naira, and that's something that people can actually use, like buy food, you know, buy other devices that use electricity, that type of thing. So.
And one thing, just in my journey with Scott that stood out to me, is that in some of these places, and he even showed a video, there's people in really high education, these higher education institutions, where they're trying to learn, they're trying to be programmers, they're trying to be scientists, and to do that they need electricity. And there's actually one school that Scott showed a video where at parts of the day, they had to turn the electricity off. So these people that are working extremely hard to better themselves, to improve their education, they literally could not use the devices, the very devices that they needed in order to learn. So by having these now portable containers, ideally harnessing the power of the sun, which is really, really powerful, these students, ideally in the future, will be able to continue learning even when the sun goes down, even when the university in the past may have had to shut down the power. But in addition to that, as we know, the sun is a renewable resource. So by having these containers, hopefully it allows more people to shift off of burning fossil fuels for their energy generation. And now, not only are they using renewable resources, but they're also spending much less capital, much less money buying this energy sources that wind up getting burned anyways. But while these energy uses are not being optimized, by allowing that extra energy to generate Bitcoin, this is also generating a significant amount of money for the people that are in these developing countries. So Scott saw something that was out there that was problematic, and he's been ideating how to fix it. He put out shipping containers, and now he's actively taking steps to make positive impact. Another person that makes incredible positive impact, he generally doesn't like to be out in the forefront, which is why it's a really special treat for us to have here today. He's with John. He's one of the kindest people I know. He's putting always like connections and magic and stuff in the background. So for those of you that are in this room, even if you're not comfortable being in the forefront, there's always things you can do in the background, like putting people together, trying to support an initiative, support something either with kindness or with your energy or with your thoughts or ideas. There are things that you can do to support a movement where you don't necessarily have to be forward-facing, and you're still going to get appreciated for it. So John, I appreciate you so much. Can you please tell us about Unicorn DAO and how it's really making things a lot more level for so many people?
Yeah, sure. So, it's on. Yeah, hey. So I appreciate the intro as being your resident shy guy on stage. Yeah, I mean, I am generally like the guy in the background. I'm comfortable with my computer screens and RGB keyboard and like the whole setup. But that being said, you know, I have found like a lot of value by coming out to these events and just meeting people. It's one of the friendliest spaces I've ever been in. William, Scott, some of the nicest people I met in the space, and the ability to just network and like, you don't have to reinvent the wheel every single time. So I look at this stuff like Legos, like crypto Lego building blocks. So you take one thing and then you take another, you add this on top, you add this on top, and all of a sudden you have a fully functioning DAO, and you're raising millions of dollars and deploying it, and you never even had to touch a line of code, which I'm not, I mean, I can kind of write code, but I can't do Solidity. So just for everybody here, there's not like a really big technical barrier of entry to Web3. There's existing products out there you can use. But yeah, so anyway, Unicorn DAO is for female and non-binary artists and builders to enter the space. Kind of came out of NFT NYC actually. It just sort of felt like too many like white frat bros just like doing finance and wearing vests and Bored Ape, just kidding. Yeah, and so out of that, I was working with, or talking to Nadia from Pussy Riot, and she's a big influential person in the space, and we were like, this is depressing, like, what do we do? How do we make this space more fun and inclusive? And if this is an art movement, like, which I truly believe NFTs are gonna be like, in the art history books, like the biggest, most influential movement in the past 50 years. It can't just be a bunch of white dudes, right? Like, come on. So it has to be more inclusive to survive, or else this space isn't gonna survive. It's not gonna be fun, it's just gonna be stupid. So Unicorn DAO was born out of that. How do we bring like women and the LGBTQ community and make it a welcoming space? So it's nice to be on that. We are working with Tribute Labs. They're the people who created the DAO framework and legislation in Wyoming. We have like MoonPay, Yuga Labs, which is Bored Apes, and CryptoPunks now. We have a bunch of crazy investors who have rallied behind us. It's been really heartening to see that. And yeah, we're gonna try to do some cool stuff.
I feel with anything that John is involved in, try doesn't exist. Cool stuff is going to happen. So definitely keep your eye on Unicorn DAO. I can't wait to see what happens. Then the next up we have Corey, who's with us from the Near Foundation. So those of you that are newer to crypto, to Web3, there's different types of cryptocurrencies. So the most popular one being Bitcoin, one that's also really well known is Ethereum. Ethereum is the chain that a lot of people are building off of. But there's a lot of other tokens that are out there. So some people, they may say one is better or worse than the other, but ultimately it's best to keep your mind open, because initially when people just thought there was ever going to be Bitcoin, a lot of them never took a serious look at Ethereum. It wasn't until Ethereum really started to build amazing things at the top of the chain that people really started noticing. So I had the privilege of meeting Near Protocol about a year ago, and just meeting them. Ever since I met them, they've always been very humble, very gracious. But since then, they've been on a near meteoric rise in terms of their growth, what they've been building on the protocol. So for us to have Near Foundation, I'm very honored. Please, Corey, tell us more and what you guys are doing.
Yeah, I appreciate it, and appreciate Scott for inviting me on. Yeah, so for those who don't know, Near Protocol, we're another layer 1 blockchain like Ethereum. Where we differ from Ethereum is we're proof of stake, where we have kind of validators who validate the transactions and the blocks that occur throughout our network. And one thing where we differ from some of the other proof of stake ones are we operate through sharding, where it kind of splits up the chain so that a group of validators don't have to specifically work on the entire chain. They can work on a piece of the chain instead, and so that really helps with the costs associated with it, the speed of the transactions and all that. So, I mean, we've seen a lot of great stuff so far. I mean, we launched our mainnet in October of 2020, so we're relatively new in terms of the space, but we've seen some great traction so far, and I think we're starting to see kind of our DAO ecosystem continue to grow. I mean, I don't know if anybody seen, but we had I mean, Ukraine was a big thing that happened. Our two founders are from Ukraine. They launched Ukraine Fund, they launched a DAO on Near, which was able to raise, I think, $2 million worth of Near. They were able to loop in Ethereum, Bitcoin, and be able to kind of, I think, raise an additional few million. And so our founders are leading the council of that DAO and are able to deploy capital to humanitarian efforts within Ukraine. Specifically, so they have a lot of close ties, so they're able to work with a lot of families there. So I think that's something that's super interesting, and I think being able to be at the forefront of kind of growing the DAO ecosystem from a kind of a protocol layer and a foundation layer, I think is something that's super important for us.
I love it. Thank you so much for it. And then finally we have Will, a name so nice we had to have it twice. And Will, two ways. You've been building things for a long time. I was reading about your bio. Most recently with Polkadot. Polkadot is another chain as well, similar to Near Protocol, similar to Ethereum, similar to Bitcoin. Polkadot is one that a lot of people are backing, just because it's a very glorious token, we'll just say. But Will, can you tell us a little bit more about Polkadot and also MantraDAO?
Yeah, so thanks for that. Two Wills, two ways. Great to see you up here. So while we do a good amount of work with Polkadot and the Polkadot ecosystem, I'll focus mostly on MantraDAO being the DAO panel that kind of we're discussing now. So what is MantraDAO? MantraDAO is a multi-chain DeFi ecosystem. Now, I know for some of the people in here that are in the Web3 space, they understand what those words mean. But kind of taking a step back and looking at DAOs and looking at DeFi. So DeFi is decentralized finance. And one of the big opportunities with blockchain, with crypto, and having this global community was bringing DeFi to people around the world. So being able to bank the 1.9 billion people that aren't banked around the world, giving them access to different financial services, different financial actions and opportunities that they wouldn't all, have access to because they might not be able to open up a bank account, they might not have enough money to put into, stock market, things like this. So, when we started MantraDAO about 2 years ago, in the middle of 2018, we were looking at kind of the global ecosystem and what, some of these emerging decentralized finance technologies and smart contracts were actually bringing to the market. With the whole thought that we want to be able to create this financial platform and financial ecosystem where people from all around the world can be able to take part in it and decide on how they want it to actually look. So for instance, when we did our token sale back in August 2020, we raised from over 1,000 people from 89 different countries. This was one of the most amazing things to see because again, it's people that see the opportunity with what DeFi is able to bring. Of course, before that, people were still figuring out what to look for in projects. This was even a little bit before kind of NFTs really saw them hitting stride. But ultimately taking a chance and taking a leap and putting in as small as $20, $100, which like what Scott was saying, if you're making $5 a month, that's significant for someone. But they want to actually take control of their financial opportunity and what they can actually do. So with what we're building with MantraDAO across all these. I don't know what's happening with this one. So what we're trying to build with MantraDAO across all these different, blockchains, ecosystems, with this, full suite of different kind of financial services built on it, is have a fully global and encompassing ecosystem where, off of, kind of these DAO structures, people can decide on, do we want to have this project launch with us? Is this something that, we want to create this staking pool for and, be able to earn interest on and earn passive income on? And being able to actually run this ecosystem on their own through, proposals, through governance, and really taking control of, their own, kind of DeFi future. So that was, a bit longer, but excited to talk a bit more on the kind of DAO structures and how we see.
Thanks, Will, appreciate you. And then just to take a quick temperature reading. So how many people are really familiar with DeFi, decentralized finance? Okay, and then how many people want to learn more? Okay, perfect. So for those of you that know decentralized finance, I appreciate you so much. We're going to need your knowledge going into the future as we get more and more people into our ecosystem and learning more about Web3. And those of you that are here that are wanting to learn, I can just take a really preliminary poll. So those of you that have your money in the bank somewhere or somewhere wherever it's stored, that money that you have in your checking or savings account, how many of you are earning more than 1% on that money? That's just saying. Okay, so there's not a lot of people. But Will, in terms of like a decentralized system, especially with DeFi, when people just hold the money either in their wallets or in a staking system where they can unstake at any time, staking meaning committing to put your money into something, or unstaking, just taking it out at any time. On average, what interest rate are people earning on their money?
So of course, if you're looking at the media or looking at any big headlines, you're going to see 10,000% interest. That's not sustainable. That's not realistic. That's a marketing ploy for a number of projects that again bringing people in, because who doesn't want to have 10,000% APY APR? Depending on the different project, depending on how the staking pools are structured. We see anything from decimal of a percent, which unfortunately is similar to the banks, but anything up to 50, 75, 100%. Again, all dependent on what you're actually doing, whether it's just staking, and there's a pool of tokens that are going up to those stakers, or you're putting into a money market and people actually borrow you against it, and paying for the interest for allowing to borrow and not go through the hassle of going to a bank and putting up your entire family as collateral kind of thing. So I'd say, there's a lot of different interest rates out there. I would be slightly hesitant if you see something that is too good to be true, because sometimes it is. But realistically, it's looking at the project, and if you believe in the team, you believe in the founders, and kind of the milestones and roadmap that they have, then they would have done a good job within their tokenomics to actually have a proper waterfall of how tokens should be distributed into the ecosystem and holders. If anyone understands what I just said.
Thank you so much, Will. So to give you the Cliff Notes version, if you take your cash and you take it into Coinbase or another centralized exchange, or you buy stablecoin, and the amazing, miraculous being of stablecoins is that the value stays roughly at $1 because of algorithms that I'll never understand. But instead of Bitcoin or Ethereum that has a lot of volatility, meaning the price could jump up or down 10% in a day, $100 in stablecoin should be worth $100 pretty much plus minus 0.0001 cent, whatever, at all times. So when you take a stablecoin into a centralized exchange like Coinbase or BlockFi or some of these other systems, you're generally getting, would you say, probably about 3 to 12% APY. So instead of in your checking your savings account now, where you're barely getting nothing and maybe getting eaten away by inflation, most likely, if you put it into a stablecoin in a very, very safe, low risk type staking or system, you're going to get anywhere from 6 to 12% APY on your money. So just with decentralized finance, there's a lot less overhead, there's a lot less systems in place that take money out of the system, and there's a lot more return that comes to you. So we're already seeing way back when someone creating the idea of decentralized finance through Web3, through blockchain, and this immediately adding value. So for those of you, the four of you that are in this space that are adding value, how did you guys get started in Web3? How can the people in this room get started? Scott?
Yeah, so I got started, I kind of learned about Web3 back in, I'd say 2011, 2012. And at that point, I think it was really just in my mind, Bitcoin, and really 99.99% of it was doing like illicit transactions and stuff like that. So kind of waited it out a little bit. And then back in 2017, 2016, when I was doing management consulting, I basically was doing a project for the UN, and we were doing emerging technology consulting, so helping the UN figure out how some of these new technologies could be applied to the Sustainable Development Goals. And one of the things on blockchain that really sort of piqued my interest was these ideas of like identity protocols. So to use like normal terms, it's basically like right now a lot of people in Southeast Asia in particular, their only form of identification is their Facebook account. So they don't actually own any like ID, it's just like, oh, it's my Facebook. So what I saw was, and what the UN was looking for was utilizing blockchain solutions to basically give people like an ID and then also to help people in some of these countries vote. So I think like the largest deployment of that has probably been in India, where before that in some places they would like dip your finger in like ink or something like that to say you voted. So I still really wasn't like sold, I would say, on like any of the crypto nonsense. It's still kind of like, you know, anyway. It really, to be totally honest, I went back through my text messages when I moved to Hong Kong and met Will and John, and I really didn't believe in any of this stuff until I met Yat from Animoca. And then he had a very, very specific vision in terms of how NFTs in particular could help with gaming. And so the example that I always give is, I used to play this game on my phone called Clash of the Clans, and I'd just be bored at work, and like I was looking at my bill, I was like, holy shit, I spent like fucking $2,000 on this phone game just because I'm bored in like a meeting. And I was like, man, I wish I could sell this thing that I spent $2,000 for, even just for like 50, 100, just get some Chipotle for a week. And basically, when I met Yat, his vision was like super simple. It was like, we can take existing games that have like 1 million monthly active users, like Sandbox, and then, gotta remember switch back. So a game like Sandbox that had 1 million monthly active users, and at that time, he's like, if we just get 10% of those people to like stay on the platform, we'll have the most popular like blockchain application. And like looking back, I would say like 95% of the things he predicted in our first meeting in 2018, it's like happened like really close to the timeline he predicted. So that was really how I got involved into like this like Web3 space. And then the last thing I say is like now, given everything that's going on with just like people's bank accounts getting shut off because they have views or they're associated with people that they don't like. When I think of what's happening in emerging markets and things like that, I actually do now see more of a use case for like a Bitcoin, Ethereum, Near, like those types of protocols, because a lot of those countries their currencies are constantly devaluing. So yeah, it's basically kind of it, very, very roundabout way to get here.
Yeah, so, that was a Vitalik inside dork joke. Yeah, I mean, no one cares about my background. I was like a vegan surfer. So I've been an animal rights advocate my whole life, and I was doing private islands, and I helped do like a big shark sanctuary in the Marshall Islands, and it became the biggest shark sanctuary on Earth, contiguous with some other places, but it's never enough. My despair and misery is what keeps me going. And to but to go back to what Jay was saying at the beginning of this, like, no one cares about my background. What we care about is like, are these tools helpful? How do we get shit done, like fucking today? And skip all of the financial bullshit, like what we did with Ukraine DAOs, like how do we get money into the hands of Ukrainian people who are fighting off people who are trying to kill them? So, you know, and we took a direct action approach. So we were funding, you know, people who were buying bulletproof vests and arming people with those. I don't know what else was going on. I think the Come Back Alive, the charity we used, was, they have a variety of things that they're doing. But I think that is really important. And, you know, regarding like prison reform and the social issues that we're facing here in America, It's really a good question. I don't know the answer, but how do we use these tools to make change, tomorrow? How do we start building tonight? And I don't personally know if I have the answers. I know I can contribute, and that's always been my lane, is like I will kind of put on different hats. I'll do the producer hat and just get shit done. I will go get coffee for people if they need it. I will chase people down if needed. I will just, I think my role at Unicorn is technically assassin, but that's not real. Yeah, so I think that the answer will come from the people in this room. If we put enough intelligent people together, we can come up with answers, and we can skip a lot of the bureaucratic systems that are basically just extensions of oppressive systems, and just bypass that and get capital to people and initiatives that matter. So I think that's what DAOs are really, really good at doing, raising money at the speed of light, and then deploying that money without any of the bullshit. And I think that's one of the best things that DAOs can do.
I love that. Yeah.
Awesome. So, I think my path started nothing similar to yours, Scott, where I was bored at work and I didn't really know what I really wanted to do, and I actually found out initially about Bitcoin from a college friend of mine. We were right before we were graduating in 2010. And he works at Boost VC, which, if anybody knows, I think they're the first VC fund that actually had Bitcoin on their balance sheet. But he told me about it in 2010. I think at the time I was scrounging to have a meal here or there, and so I probably should have skipped a few meals and just put money into Bitcoin if I could go back to time. But I think similar to everybody else, I jumped down the rabbit hole, looked into Bitcoin, thought Bitcoin was a cool use case, then learned about Ethereum, dove down the rabbit hole of Ethereum, and then kind of expanded my horizons there. And I think it's similar with NFTs and DAOs. I think with NFTs, I think it started off with PFPs, and then everybody's like, okay, this is cool, but it's just a JPEG. What do you do with it? And now we're starting to see utility around NFTs, and I think it's the same thing with DAOs, where DAOs really started off as just investment DAOs, like Flamingo DAO, investing in NFTs. There were some venture DAOs and stuff like that, and now you're seeing DAOs where they have kind of a different utility and use case, and I think exploring those and experimenting on those, I think it's something that's super important. I think Constitution DAO, they weren't all that successful in what they did, mainly because they were so transparent in how much money they raised that somebody was just like, okay, you raised 42, I'll do 42.5, and now I own the Constitution. So, but I think that those experiments, I think, are something that's very useful in the space and really helping kind of evolve what's going on, and we've seen it from the start of Bitcoin, and now we're seeing it now with NFTs, DAOs, and everything happening. So I think it's something that we're seeing a shift and an evolution within kind of the days of the internet, and I think it's something that's really interesting as we grow.
So when I was getting into the space in 2016, there was a lot less content out there. So this is useful for people that are trying to learn about what is Web3, what is blockchain, what are NFTs, what is crypto. Back in 2016, there was a lot of bullshit on the internet and very little factual reading to do about what blockchain is. And so my journey into the space, as I was kind of just getting more and more interested with the technology, was being online, reading, hosting meetups. I was living in Shanghai at the time, and engaging with different communities, different people, different builders, and trying to see what they were doing within the space, how things worked, what made sense. And so one of the really interesting parts, and this kind of drove me from leaving my full-time job at the time and going full into crypto, was through reading a lot of these different articles, research papers, white papers, things like this, it did a really good job of highlighting what was wrong with the current system. How many different legacy frameworks, how many different centralized systems were around there that have just been failing what the core of specific business or action or anything is trying to do, and how blockchain was solving that. Blockchain that boiled completely down is a transparent way of seeing all transactions and how things are moved and being able to track it so that it can never be changed, it can never be falsified, and it's fully transparent. So some of the use cases, and this is an amazing thing now with the evolution and seeing more for social justice and good, is looking at kind of a lot of the bad things that happen with like Red Cross and raising hundreds of millions of dollars, and realistically only 40% of that money actually being deployed for disaster relief, or things like this, and you have their high-level C-level people that are flying around private to different places and taking advantage of the money because there's no transparency. It's completely opaque. It's something that no one has any idea what's actually happening besides just them hoping that it's ending up in the right hands. And so being able to see that blockchain would be able to, in a fully transparent way, go, I'm not going to go to a system like Red Cross that, I'm not saying don't do that, but being able to actually say, I'm going to donate money to Ukraine, and I'm going to see it directly go into this wallet, and this program that's helping, refugees, that's going for food, that's going for supplies, and being able to, track and know that the money that you're actually giving for these different projects and organizations is actually reaching them at the end. So, I'd say as you're getting into the space, community is everything. That's definitely the easiest way to kind of get into it. Go on YouTube, there's a lot of good content out there. Read anything you get your hands on. Not all of it will be true or good info, but that's how you know when you actually read good info or good facts or good processes and things like this, that you'll be like, that sounds a lot better than that piece of shit I just read. But I think that as you get more and more in the space, you meet more people, you really see the power that the blockchain as a technology, crypto as these transactional pieces, and just the communities in general are able to actually bring people together and bring the world together in a truly borderless fashion.
Yes, absolutely. And then there's some DAOs that have dozens of members, handfuls of members. There's some DAOs with hundreds or even thousands of members. So for those of you that are in this room, even if you've been in the blockchain Web3 space for a while, you guys still could start up a DAO about an issue or a mission that's really that you're really passionate about, that means a lot to you, and you can really make a positive impact pretty quickly. But for those of us that have been in this space for a while, what are some challenges or obstacles you've had and that you've had in this space? How did you guys overcome them? And do you guys have any tips for people that either are in DAOs now or are thinking about starting DAOs that they may want to keep an eye out for?
Yeah, so when Connor and myself started LiquidStar, that was 2018, and originally Connor had the idea to make it a DAU, Decentralized Autonomous Utility Company. And as we started to talk to people, we were a little bit in the Web3 bubble, and as we started to talk to people in government and stuff, they're like, okay, well, if things go wrong, who do we put in jail and who do we sue, right? And so what that kind of reminded me of is like when I did the emerging technology stuff, where my first project was like helping these, it's really weird, it was helping these utility linemen learn how to use Google Glass. And basically what the program manager for the project didn't even have a smartphone, right? And it's like, yeah, you can use Google Glass to do this, and he just looked at me and was like, Scott, if this thing doesn't work one time, we will never use this again. So then you start to think like, okay, well, look, yeah, actually pen and paper is like probably the best for you guys, right? And so what I would say is that the thing that I'm trying to do in this space, and Connor and myself with LiquidStar, is actually have the proper stakeholder management, right? So I say that I'm more of a believer in like Web 2.5. I think that's really the Web 3, where you have these quasi-decentralized organizations that actually know how to get the stakeholders on board. So a good example of that is that there's all these like blockchain companies, Web3 and DAOs, that are like trying to like undercut currencies and stuff like that to get in countries, and they don't realize that like the people that you give that to, like they will be found out and you're actually putting them in danger. So we had someone that we worked with that had a bunch of like Bitcoin, and he was actually like robbed and beat up and like forced to kind of like give up some of his coins, right? Because like what I say to a lot of these Web3 people is like, are you really willing to die to like make Bitcoin a thing? I doubt it. Like when they come for you, you're gonna be like, oh, here's my password. So it's really just taking this like realistic approach to like how the world actually works and making slight changes. So versus all the other blockchain companies that are just trying to subvert every single system, we just said like, hey, we're gonna mine Bitcoin, but no person in your country will ever get it. And in fact, we're gonna take that mining of Bitcoin and we're gonna actually buy more of your currency and give that to the locals instead, right? And there's zero barrier to that because I talked to my friend who's a macroeconomist that works with central bankers in emerging markets, and he was like, yeah, well, if you guys are buying their currency, this is great, right? And so then now they're way more willing, we're only like 5 people, but they're way more willing to work with us than some other organization that has like billions of dollars. So really what I kind of say in the space is that like, keep it simple, stupid. There's like all this stuff and people are trying to like, as John said, reinvent the wheel sometimes a lot, and they're actually just replicating things that exist and giving it a more complicated name. Like DAO is probably a good example of that. It's like really no different than a shareholder, just a way to get around regulations in some sense. So really kind of like the advice that I give people is like keep things like very, very simple and think about how you structure things. And I think that's why I want to put this event together specifically with Reform and ASJ, because they actually know how to do this. So a lot of the people in here, you think that you guys are giving them like all this stuff. They actually deal with, on a day-to-day basis, the people that you Web3 people need to learn how to speak to in order to get the changes that you want. So don't think of it as like, oh, like we know all this stuff about Web3. They actually speak to politicians, they actually help lobby, they actually help get laws changed, right? So they actually have a lot of value to offer you. And so the final kind of thing I'll say around this part of what I'm saying up is that understanding all of these different stakeholders for the LiquidStar NFT drop, which is going to be a token-gated DAO, basically what we're doing is we're saying that you're making a $450 donation to a nonprofit and you're actually getting the NFT for free, right? And everyone's like, why are you doing that? It's like, well, we have US government grants and like we need to know exactly where every single dollar that we're getting is coming from in order to keep those grants, right? And so it's little things like that that I believe will help us scale, even if we're not going to be able to go out and raise like, you know, $50 million or $10 million or $5 million, because we actually believe it's like a long-term 3, 5, 10-year process. We're actually taking the time to get all the different stakeholders on board and aligned at every level of government, all the way down to the person in rural Nigeria to like really understand what they want. So that's kind of like, again, why I tried to put this thing together, is to say that like, no offense, the Web3 people are extremely delusional in how the world actually works. They need to connect to people like ASJ who are actually on the ground working with people and talking to those people that you need to speak with. So that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I'll also add to that. So I was looking at how many people are in this room. There's like around 80 to 90 people in the room, less than 100. And with a traditional DAO, you can only have up to 99 for like SEC regulation reasons. So if you've ever gone out to dinner with like 3 or 5 people and you're all trying to decide where to go, like achieving consensus is hard. So imagine right now if I was like, as a DAO right now, we're gonna start a Marvel superhero DAO and we're gonna pick like, who's the most powerful superhero? Let's go. All of us. We're all equal. So like, so the point is, this is a nightmare, and we would never achieve consensus, and there'd be infighting, and there'd be like, and that's what DAOs kind of are right now, unfortunately, because they have to be flat, there's no hierarchy, and that's the way that they are legally. So I think to Scott's point about the idealism of Web3 people, like, it's a interesting new concept, but we haven't refined it at all. And yeah, like there's a trade-off with decentralization, and decentralization is part of the, the name DAO. Like, it would be a lot more efficient if the D stood for dictator, because then it's one person, one choice, like efficient as fuck. But with a DAO, it's super inefficient. It's fair, it's equitable, but it's super inefficient for decision making. So the tooling on that and the way that we start to operate in our minds and coming to consensus with other people has to change as well.
Yeah, so I totally agree with that, and I think where we've seen, at least from Nir's perspective, we've seen DAOs be pretty successful in having some sort of like structure and like almost like delegation and like council around the leadership of the DAO and having some framework behind that. I think for us as a protocol and kind of managing the entire ecosystem, the Nir ecosystem we have, it's really hard for us to kind of manage the different verticals that are building. So we have DeFi projects building, we have NFT projects, we have DAOs, we have gaming and metaverse, and so working with teams and projects that are like subject matter experts within that vertical, I think is super important for us to really be able to like work with those people and have them kind of rely on them to kind of drive the growth within that specific vertical. But then also I think we're working on building out regional hubs and DAOs around different regions. So we have a strong presence in Ukraine, and so building a kind of a regional hub around Ukraine, building a regional hub around Lisbon, which seems like it's a very big kind of blockchain crypto space as well. We're looking into like Latin America and Brazil is one area that I think is super important for us in building out and kind of working with a lot of folks there that are interested in the space but don't really have a place to work in. And then so I think working with subject matter experts and regional experts who are kind of the boots on the ground within that area and being able to lead that DAO and lead kind of the strategy around that, I think is super important. So while it is important to have a fully decentralized hierarchy, I think it's one that is a detriment, I think, to DAOs, and so being able to have someone who's kind of leading the charge there, I think is super important.
Absolutely. So real quick, so for the people that are here that are either in DAOs or building DAOs, what are some things based on your experience you would advise or tell people so they can watch out for themselves?
Yeah, so I mean, answering that and taking a bit from kind of everyone's answer up here. If you're looking to run a DAO, start a DAO, something that is realistic that you might kind of take a step back. It's not going to be a DAO from day one. If you want to get a project started, you need to build a framework. You need to be able to build the DAO, the services, the ecosystem, the roadmap for what this DAO is going to be able to achieve. You need to be able to build the cornerstones before you can ultimately build a community and build a ecosystem around that. So the first thing and the first hurdle to get over is that it's not going to be a DAO from day one. If you're looking at building a long-term sustainable DAO that can actually eventually operate as what a DAO should be, which is completely decentralized and completely autonomous. Having something where through smart contracts, you're actually able to have people, make proposals, vote, and then if that vote is approved, it's executed through smart contracts. There's no one that can be a middleman or no, human error that can come in and say, actually, I don't think I should do that. So, I'd say the first thing is you have to build up before you can actually become a DAO. I'd say another big piece is in order to become a DAO, you need to be able to educate the people within your community and your ecosystem about how it actually works. Like I mentioned, when we did our fundraise, we raised from people from 89 different countries. That was trying to communicate to people from all these different parts of the world. This is the goal of what we want to do. What are you guys' thoughts? How do you want to see it grow? But also, this is how it's going to work as we grow, from year 1 to year 2 to year 5 to year 10, and having you guys actually be part of everything that's that the community and the ecosystem's doing through this DAO structure. But I mean, we're still far away as a DAOs in general from having complete understanding, knowledge, and education about how to actually contribute positively in a DAO ecosystem that helps everyone else that's a token holder, an NFT holder, and within that ecosystem. So, I think there's a number of problems and difficulties that have been in the past with DAOs, but luckily this year and over the next couple of years, a big thing that people are focusing on, having realized and started DAOs themselves, is looking at a lot of the different infrastructure that goes around a DAO. And this is something that, it's amazing to see, and it'll be a very collaborative across the space, is then looking at, kind of DAO infrastructure that people can use. So, having everything from treasury management to, your employment, to, these different pieces that, again, if you're a proper DAO, it means that everything is being executed based around what people are proposing and what people are deciding upon. That includes hiring people, that includes, even potentially what, salaries will be, what offices to open, if there should be any. So, a lot of these things that we look at as just kind of the basic building blocks for starting a traditional company, DAOs won't be any different. So you'll need a lot of that infrastructure to actually operate as a, proper DAO. So I think that's something really interesting that we're seeing, now and seeing that's emerging a lot in the future. So if you are looking to start a DAO, you're not alone. There's a lot of really good projects and infrastructure that's popping up around it, so that from day one you can focus on building the community, building the message, educating everybody, so that they can actually be part of your DAO in a positive way that they understand and can actually help the whole group. And reach out to other DAOs and see what they found good, they found bad, what's useful, what isn't. Everyone's open to talk, I'd say, for the most part.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing to note is that DAOs are still a big experiment, and so you're gonna break things, you're gonna screw up, and it's just about learning from those mistakes and kind of figuring out what works and what doesn't work, and going along. That's why I think Constitution DAO was so great, because it got the word out about DAOs, and even though they weren't successful, I think the project itself was successful, and just kind of having normal people kind of understand what kind of crypto and blockchain and DAOs can be about. With us, we just announced, and it kind of sounds bougie as fuck, but we announced a partnership with a sailing league, and so we're allowing, in 2024, we're allowing a DAO-owned boat to be able to race, and so the DAO will be able to announce, choose who's going to be leading the team, who's going to be on the team, who's going to be, what the boat's going to look like what sponsors you're going to have for the boat. And so just being able to do that and see how DAOs can evolve, and hopefully my Chicago Bears can have a DAO team so we can finally beat the Green Bay Packers. But I just think there's a lot of different ways that I think DAOs can be. There are a lot of different ways DAOs can be, I think, implemented, and we're still in that experimental phase, and I think that's what's super exciting about it.
I love it. So